Well, welcome back to the podcast, everybody. We got a new person in the seat today, Robert Ramsey. Say hi to everybody.
How's it going?
How's it going? Yeah. I'm really looking forward to this one because, one, let me put a little groundwork to this. All right. So I'm going to let the audience in on a little behind closed doors. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
In the staff circle.
Yes.
Would you agree that I probably get made fun of the most? You can say yes, because that's
that.
true.
That could be
me. I catch most of the bullets.
Okay,
all right?
sure.
But two people that never get made fun of or never get messed with. One is Justin, because I think everybody knows that he could wrap us in a pretzel and we couldn't stop him.
Yes, I agree.
But then the second one is you, Robert.
Oh, wow.
And here's my theory.
Uh-oh.
You are so nice. And one of the most genuine guys that I know, where it was like, we can't make fun of him. He's too nice.
Wow. Well,
So
I appreciate that, but I'm not a big trash talker. Like I've tried before and it just doesn't work, and so I've
seen you
just
try.
Stay clear. Oh,
I've seen you try, and it always ends with you saying you're sorry. And you're not supposed to do that.
I got you.
You just got to keep going.
I can't live with it. I have to retract it. You know.
Well, all right. But anyways, in all seriousness, though, I am happy to get to have this conversation with you, because I can say this. Obviously, I'm going to be biased to the guys that work around here, just because I know y'all very well, and obviously, I think we have the greatest church ever. Just because anybody should feel that way about where they go to church. You know what I'm saying? But I've heard from a number of people that the way that you lead worship and the way that you conduct yourself, the way that you carry yourself, is pure. It's genuine, and like we're actually worshiping. It's not a show. It's not a production, but you are genuinely leading us into worship, and I do appreciate that. As a guy that I can't barely play the radio, like I appreciate that. So.
I've heard your music. And it's fun. It's good.
You trying to talk trash right now?
No.
Okay.
It's a compliment, man.
Okay.
Yeah. Little Forrest Frank. That's what I've heard most recently. So.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. But no, I do appreciate that. But
well,
to kind of get into the topic of what we're talking about today, when we were discussing, kind of where we wanted to go with this, the topic you brought up was adoption, and so. Kind of before I can really start asking you a bunch of questions, kind of lead this conversation, tell us why you want to talk about that.
Well, first, man, I'm grateful to get to hang out with you. Grateful for you, Wes, and this topic intimidates me, even though I've experienced it. As far as me and Brooke adopting, there's still so much that I think I'm learning on a daily basis, and that the whole process is still teaching me. And two, I think any of us parents, my kids are what make me just fall apart. Like I get mushy emotionally. So that's another aspect of this conversation that I just think, okay, hold it together, Robert. But yeah, it's near and dear to our hearts because of what God walked us through and carried us through in so many ways. To where we eventually adopted, and it has impacted my life as much or more than anything else. So it's a powerful word to consider, and everybody's experience is different. And so the things that I know and I've experienced, and then of course running to God's word and seeing the applications there of what adoption means, it's big. And so I'm always passionate to talk about it, but never feel confidently sufficient in what I have to say about it, but I love it.
Yeah, well, kind of from what I hear you saying is you have a good story with regards to adoption. Sure. You have, and so I ask you, can you give us kind of your story, best that you can?
Okay.
Whatever you want to say,
sure.
However you want to go about it, just tell us your story. Because I can say this, it was probably, I've known you for what? I've worked here for 7 years, and then I came to college here before that. But like maybe 3 years ago, I found out that y'all had adopted your daughter, and I was like
vaguely something about that.
I was like,
remember
what?
That moment? Yeah,
because she looks just like you. I mean, it's like what? So
wow.
But anyways, floor is yours, bro.
Yeah, and that one statement was a huge element for me too. This is the part where I just have to be cautious and be able to hold it together. But it's all good. Several years ago, our daughter is about to be 15, so a little bit more than that. A couple of years before that, we walked through a season where we experienced some trials and some tough times, and wanting to have kids. Brooke had a couple of miscarriages, and there were a lot of factors in our lives that kind of brought us to that point. And we kind of gave in to a point. I experienced a lot of emotional ups and downs, and we had talked about adoption. I'll never forget, just a side note, when I was like in junior high or something, I remember a CD that I got of Stephen Curtis Chapman's, and there was this little pamphlet inside like the CD cover about adoption. I know he and his wife are huge on adoption, and for some reason my mind has for years gone back to that moment where I first saw that, and I thought, well, I wonder what that would be like to adopt. Well, God just in our life, in our story, brought us to that point after some tough times and some losses and frustrations and sadness and a husband and wife. There's so many people that we will never know about that walk through a lot in a season like that. But God used that in our lives to bring us to the point to where we basically just said, okay, Lord, if this is what we're supposed to do, then here we are. We surrender. And it was immediately God started opening doors, and I could spend all day talking about just the whole process, but it was September-ish. It was a Labor Day weekend, and then throughout those next couple of weeks that we basically came to that point. And then 2 months later, our daughter was born, and we got to show up the night that she was born, and the rest is history. That's our daughter. And so that's the gist of our story, and then everything that has come with that as far as, before she got here, one of the things I struggled with was, okay, is this child going to look like us? What's the background going to be that we kind of collide with, so to speak? But it's almost on a weekly, if not daily basis, somebody comes up to me and says, man, she looks just like you. And it's like every time that happens, God just says, see what I did, know? And that's not every scenario, everybody's story, but that's one of the many things that I think God keeps reminding me of see what I did. It wasn't you. It wasn't you and Brooke. It was how I stepped in and just allowed this incredible thing to take place in your life. So, yeah.
I don't want to lead us down getting a box of Kleenexes or anything out here. Because I will say this. I think anybody that has a new child, and whether a boy or a girl, they're going to get a little bit more emotional just because of whatever. Something about little girls, though, man.
Oh,
dude,
that.
Now, my little girl will be 2 next month, and I cried watching Toy Story 3 a couple weeks ago. And I'm like, what's going on with me? But if you'd like, you want to tell a story about the day you adopted your little girl?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Or the day that y'all met her.
Yeah. Sure. And I don't want to make this all about our story, but just, I love to share that. Try to keep it brief. It was a Sunday.
Yeah.
I had Christmas rehearsals all that afternoon. We went to a pizza restaurant in the town we lived in Cabot, and with some awesome friends from our church. And we were sitting there eating supper, and Brooke's phone rings, and I look at it, and I can see who it is. It's the lady from the adoption agency. It's like, she would not be calling you unless something's taking place right now. So, my eyes get big, and she answers the phone, and she's like, okay. And I remember just, hey, can we get our pizza to go? They were bringing it out right then. They put it in some carryout boxes, and we took off, went to the house, got a couple things, and then hit the road and got to show up the location she was born. And I walked in. I was actually the first one to walk in, and a nursery area has windows surrounding it.
Yeah.
Well, I walk up and there's this nurse inside that window, kind of caring for a baby, just wrapping the baby and just doing the essential things there. And I look at her and I said, I don't know what I'm supposed to say, but we're adopting, and I think the baby's being born. Can somebody tell us what to do? And her eyes got so huge, and she took a couple of double takes, like she looked directly down and looked back up at me.
Is
and
this
I'm like, why is she looking at that baby in that mirror that's in that baby bed, or in through that window that's in that baby bed? And little did I know that's my daughter right there.
Yeah.
And so after that was my first moment to see her.
Yeah.
Had no idea, but it was about 1:30 or so that next morning. That was around 10 o'clock that night, and then 1:30 that morning, it was when we first got to hold her, and that was, oh, Wes, you talk about a baby girl. Yes, I held her, and we had a moment. We prayed over, and I'm just like, I don't know if anybody understood what I was saying when I was praying, but because I was a mess, but that was the most just powerful thing that had ever taken place in my life.
Yeah.
Rocked my world in a lot of awesome ways.
Would you say that at some point in time, because I want to be careful with asking these questions, that there may be people listening to this that may be going through a time that you and Brooke were going through before y'all made the decision to adopt, or just the trials of trying to have a baby and things like that. In that moment when you finally met her and you were holding her, was it a sense of relief? Was it a sense of like you knew God had answered prayers? What was the overwhelming feeling that you had then?
That's huge. All of that. There was joy and excitement, the emotion of everything in joyful ways. How do I express that? When something new and fresh is taking place in your life, and you're just the most excited and pumped, and like, here we go. I'm going to own this. Like, I felt like, man, I'm going to give it my best to be the best dad in the world. Holding her, I just thought, here's my moment. Here's my opportunity to just give it everything that I've got. Yeah. I remember those feelings, and we still have those goals and responsibilities. We get weary along the way as parents, but that's where I was. I was so excited, and there was something special too. Going back to that, when Brooke and I were sitting at a Mexican restaurant across the table from a lady who introduced this baby girl that was going to be born, and this birth mom, and not in person, but just shared the information with us. I reached over and just touched Brooke, I think, on the hand, like squeezed her hand, like, a girl. Oh my gosh, we're going to have a baby girl. And there was just something so powerful about that. Like, man, I'm going to be the dad of a girl. Yeah. How crazy, but how incredible this is going to be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right. So I set you up to answer that one, to answer this next one. Just like I said, there may be people going through and you saying that may give them some hope of something to come, but how could you encourage those people that are currently in the sad time? What from what you learned from the deepest, darkest kind of moments, what did God show you in those moments? What did He teach you? What's something you could encourage people going through the same thing?
That God is working in the midst of what we can't always see and what we can't comprehend. Going back to something I kind of hinted on a moment ago, I struggle with not being able to have things happen in my life like I thought, and they lived happily ever after kind of story, and so we have a couple of kids or whatever, and we had to struggle through that. And looking back, my daughter's story is the most impactful thing that's happened in my life to remind me that God is at work. Because of how I look back and I see wow, I see in our lives there were times and potentially open doors for us to maybe not even ever live in Cabot. But if that were the case, what would have happened, you know? Now, God's able. He could have brought us together, and as a family, she would be our daughter. But he used our placement in Cabot, Arkansas, and everything that took place around that, us living there for the time, the relationships we had with people that connected us with the adoption agency, all of that God used. And looking back, if things had not lined up in our lives like they did, the end result would not be where we are today, 15 years later. Yeah. And I'm just so grateful for that. And I look back, as hard as those times were, I'm reminded daily of how good God is, how faithful he is, and that he's working and providing in ways that it's hard and we can't see and we don't comprehend, and it doesn't seem like it's supposed to be. But he's doing something incredible.
Yeah. All right. So now here's kind of a little transition to a little bit in the conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty evident that there's a need in our culture, in our society, with regards to foster care, adoption, things like that. And I've watched several couples do it very well. But they also experience pretty difficult things, just random things that they didn't have control over. Sure. You know. However, I've gotten to take part in. I say take part. I just by happenstance, I just got to be a part of a church gathering around people who were adopting a child or going through foster care, and it's a very sweet time. Everybody's excited and things like that. So, how would you say, one, how did the local church benefit you and Brooke? So, I'll answer that first. But then, second, how could we do better?
Wow. Oh, those are good questions. And by the way, this is not answering that question in any way. We have an awesome son, by the way.
Oh yeah, kids.
Along the way, if for some reason he ever goes like, "Dad, you never mentioned me."
Oh yeah.
But we are so blessed, and that's a story of its own. How my wife gave birth to our son, and we're so blessed, and in all of those ways of how God's worked and provided in our lives. But going to that. Man, our church was incredible. Just to shout out, our previous church before we came to Russellville was Mount Carmel Baptist Church in Cabot, and our staff, our friends, our choir and orchestra there, everybody that just surrounded us and supported us and celebrated with us was huge. And I remember being showered with, all the baby gifts, and they threw a huge shower where we had all kinds of stuff to haul home. And we're like, where do we put all of this stuff? But they took such good care of us, and that was so important. There were major financial commitments in that process, and due to the quickness of the process, that from what we learned, an agency might match adoption parents with a birth mom, 18 months out or so, or not. Well, they would know that she was expecting, but and they may not be matched. For several months. But when they commit to that process, it's kind of along the way they're putting in deposits, so to speak, and there's a lot of financial cost and responsibility there, at least in the process that we walked through. And it was a situation where we saw very well how that was needed. Ours got squeezed into 2 months, and so we were pretty stretched, to say the least. And I won't go into all that. Dave Ramsey would probably not smile at this financial status we found ourselves in for a brief time, but again, God provided through all of that. But being aware of not only the financial circumstances, but just the emotional circumstances that adoptive parents could have gone through. Again, we were surrounded and supported by family and friends, church, in incredible ways. We were blessed, as I believe many are. Something I've learned that's just a little more, technically or officially, that I saw it and I experienced it in a lot of ways, but didn't really label it that. I just, life was life. But any kind of adoption process or foster especially, and man, I admire and champion foster parents. Any kind of situation like that roots in a traumatic experience of some kind. There's trauma involved, and whether it's a hope to be mom experiencing miscarriages, and we could go down the trail of talking infertility, or in a situation where there's a tough environment that the child comes out of that is fostered or adopted. There's some sort of emotional or other trauma that takes place, and that impacts people, especially kids. There's a connection there that's broken. There's experiences that are familiar, not that they're the best experiences, but that's what they know, that when drawn out of that, just life is royally uprooted and changed. And so being aware, I think, as the church, that there's so much involved in that scenario, that and I've seen evidence of that. And I don't know if we're going down that road either, but I'm grateful. Just around the state, there's a lot of things taking place, especially like with Arkansas Baptist Family Ministries, a networking of resources and people to come alongside and provide a lot of provisions and necessities for people who have jumped wholeheartedly into fostering or adopting, and that's really cool to see. And our church is part of that. We've got some people in our church who are pursuing just being a part of that, and how we can better be a part of that as a church.
Yeah, that's some things that I haven't ever even thought about. The emotional side that comes from both the family that's doing the adopting, and then also, I would have. Let me rephrase that. I understand it coming from, if there's a child that's being adopted, there's some tough circumstances that they're being adopted out of. Sure.
Yeah.
I never thought about the people doing the adopting.
Yeah.
Whether it be their inability to have children, things like that. I just never would have thought about that. And you also have I was thinking this whenever you were talking that, for example, y'all were 2.5 months, boom, there's this happening.
Yeah.
The things that I have experienced, whether it be with my wife's pregnancy, we're all preparing for this coming of baby, but then like all of our friends that everybody knows it's coming. There's a specific date, like it's this long drawn out, multiple baby showers. There's, everybody's prepared, and so on and so forth. That I could see where it would be difficult, to where it's like, I could see it being difficult, especially for the mother, like the mom, where it's like, I'm not getting to experience these baby showers. I'm not getting to experience going to get the ultrasound. I'm not getting to experience these things. I don't know if it's just as a man or just it being insensitive. I've never thought about that. So you saying that was convicting. Just because, is it awesome whenever somebody does get to adopt a child, and that child is fully their child? I mean, it's like we have very close friends that have multiple families that have done that, and I love their children very much. I mean, that's their kid. Yeah. But those are some things I've never thought about, and I appreciate you saying that.
Just piggyback off of that, with an adoption, it always finalizes with a court appearance with a judge, and or at least in general, that's the way things take place. And I remember just months ago, some friends here in our church that adopted, and I got to be there for that experience just here across town. Those are really cool moments, and I'll never forget the judge. It was kind of a cool moment in multiple ways, but the judge that came to us and said, okay, as of this very moment right now, she is not your adoptive daughter or adopted daughter. She's your daughter. And that's it. There's no turning back. And that's another highlighted moment for me, that adoption is such, if not the most perfect and beautiful picture of the gospel.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no turning back. Once we are sealed in Christ, it's done. And again, that just, as I said to start with, God has used this experience in my life to teach me so much about my relationship with Him. And so, yeah.
All right, so now let's maybe transition a little bit more. All right. So you said she's 15 now, which means
about to be here in a couple of, and just
she's starting to learn
soon.
to drive yet?
We're getting there.
Yeah,
we're getting there.
I hear you.
She's not excited about that, but maybe it's starting to grow though.
Okay, well, so you've got a lot more experience on raising a little girl than I do, and then I'm sure there's guys listening that have little girls or or maybe just little children in themselves. What is one thing that you wish that you would have known about raising a little girl that you've learned along the way, but you wish you'd have known day one? And then two, what have you learned the most from her? If that makes sense.
That may help. That second question may help me respond to the first one. The one thing, now if I get this all straight in my head, man, see, it's complicated, Wes. It's so complicated.
Yeah.
It's so good. My daughter is my baby girl, and what I have learned is it's delicate. It's delicate. Just the whole process. There are times when there may be frustration or I don't know, whatever the circumstance is, that the fleshly part of me wants to just like, well, why do we got to act like this? Why does? And my beautiful wife helps in those moments to like just understand and okay, and I've learned that on this side of it. So I wish, looking back, probably to head it off, that I would have recognized just how delicate it could be to raise a princess, a daughter. And it's a beautiful thing, because I will protect her with my life like I will my whole family. But there's something very precious and delicate about raising a daughter. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
It does.
All right.
I've already, like, my wife has said kind of the same things just 2 years in, like about like bath time. I'm like, we have a task to do. Let's get it done.
Yeah.
And let's go to the next.
By the book.
And she's very like, hey, let's slow down. She's enjoying this. Okay. Just because, I'm like, it's 8:30. We're already past schedule. We got to go,
Yes.
And so
the whole time thing, got to go now.
Yeah, that's over.
I've learned to just step back at times, and it's okay if we're a little late. It's fine.
Yeah. And so if I could put a summary statement on this conversation about just the adoption process with your little girl, is it's I don't want to say it was the hardest. It might have been the hardest, but a very, very hard time in your life and in your marriage has brought forth this thing that has taught you more about who God is, how much He loves you.
Wow. Yeah.
Than anything else in life.
100%.
And so I guess what we could say, either A, someone's going through a similar situation where, like, man, we really want to be a mommy and daddy, but it's just not, like, something's not happening. That God's not just forgotten about them.
Yeah.
Or then two, somebody going through the adoption process of, like, this is a beautiful thing, and be patient on the Lord, And then also, what I've also learned is just being a part of a church, how we could do better of just like, there's more to the story than just a child. Woohoo! Somebody has a child now. There's layers.
Yeah.
And so with that being said, if you could go back and do it over again, would you change anything?
No.
That's what I thought you'd say.
Time and time again. Yeah. God is good. That's all I can say. And there's such, my eyes have been opened to a great need that we have in our, in our state, in our nation, around the world. Just babies that need mamas and daddies. And yeah, I would go back 100% and do it all over again to be able to stand here or sit here today and celebrate what God's done.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Robert,
Yeah.
you're the man.
Oh, back at you, man. This is good.
Yeah. All right, guys.